Hey y'all, and welcome back to another episode of Flick Connection. In this episode, we're going to talk about 10 of the most visually stunning movies you can currently catch on Hulu. And I know Hulu is one of the less popular platforms that I cover here on Flick Connection, but down in that top pinned comment, you'll find the full list of all the titles, along with other streaming services also hosting these movies in the US, Canada, the UK, and Australia. This episode is sponsored by Sundays for Dogs. We'll talk more about them in a bit, but for now, let's start with my number 10 pick, which is an underrated Vin Diesel flick. That's right, a Vin Diesel movie titled Bloodshot. This is actually based on a graphic novel series and stands out as one of the better Vin Diesel movies in recent years. I would actually put this one close to the last Riddick movie, which I thought was excellent. The only real problem I have with this movie is it's got a PG-13 rating and the content is so hyper-violent, I think it really should have earned an R rating. The action would have been better. But this movie does feature some stunning visuals, a pretty interesting plot for a Vin Diesel movie. And you also got Guy Pearce playing a pretty good character in this as well. And again, like I said, visually interesting. It's certainly the most forgettable movie on this particular list. But if you're just going for a visually interesting action sci-fi flick that you can easily forget, Bloodshot is an excellent pick. My next selection for this list is a throwback, and some of you are going to be surprised I've got it this far back on the list. It's the now classic Leonardo DiCaprio flick, The Beach.
1 kilometer.
2.
Richard? I don't know. I'm thinking miles, not kilometers. I'm American. So let's go.
Now this is from director Danny Boyle, the same director as Trainspotting and 28 Days Later, and The Beach is very different from a lot of his flicks, and this was written by Alex Garland, who most recently wrote and directed Civil War, but maybe most famous for also writing 28 Days Later and writing and directing Ex Machina. So there's a good pedigree with this movie, but it is fairly slow-paced, lacks a little bit of focus and direction, yet that somehow works for this particular story. And then some of you will be shocked that my next pick actually even made this list, because I know this one turned a lot of people off, myself included, last year's Poor Things.
Bella, this is Mr. McCandles.
Hello, Bella.
Now this one makes the list because it's obviously just a visual stunner of a movie. I mean, yes, there's some computer effects for backgrounds and things in the movie, but there's also a lot of just dazzling sets and costumes, bizarre stuff that's also just really beautiful. I mean, it's an incredible looking movie. And I like Yorgos Lanthimos' other films, or at least most of them. In fact, his weirder ones I tend to like a lot. This one really did not hit me very well, and it was mainly just the subject matter. I had a hard time not wrapping my head around, but had a hard time getting into this one, I think for obvious reasons for some of you. If you have not seen this movie, for a feminist movie, it's got a very bizarre take, in my opinion. While I do get it, it's off-putting to say the least, and just fair warning if you haven't seen this movie or you haven't heard the word, it is loaded with graphic sex, and not the delightful kind either. It's, again, pretty off-putting.
I must go punch that baby.
But moving on to a Hulu original action movie that is just a real dazzler, Boss Level.
Renter, man who technique killed 150 times.
The power to rewrite history is mine.
Now this one is a real basic setup. It's essentially Groundhog Day set up as an action movie. Frank Grillo is the lead. He wakes up in bed every morning and has to fight his way through the same group of bad guys trying to reach the boss, actually played by Mel Gibson in this movie. And this is from director Joe Carnahan, who did The A-Team, Smokin' Aces, The Gray, Narc, and a handful of others I really enjoy. And this is also not really a Hulu original movie. This was originally going to come out in theaters, but it was during the pandemic, and so they sold it to Hulu. And Netflix action movies tend to feel like Netflix action movies, whereas this actually feels like a big budget blockbuster you could have seen in the theaters. It does have some mind-bending elements, but it's also just kind of a silly, fun movie that you don't have to take very seriously at all. In fact, I would say this is an action movie lover's kind of dream of a movie. And because this list just features visually stunning movies, it's a pretty eclectic list. I mean, Boss Level and Poor Things are on completely opposite ends of the spectrum, and my next pick doesn't fit in with either one of those. It's Michael Mann's Ali. Now, this movie got tons of credit for Will Smith's performance. He got nominated for an Oscar, and he's good in the movie. I'm not going to discredit that, but this is also just one of Michael Mann's most visually stunning movies, and he has made some stunners. Ali is just photographically beautiful in almost every single frame. It is pretty long in the sense that it drags multiple times throughout its duration, making it kind of difficult to rewatch multiple times, but it really is one of Michael Mann's best films, and it's not one of those movies where you need to want to watch a boxing movie or want to watch a movie about Ali. If you just want to watch a really good film about some real events and real people, Michael Mann absolutely killed it with this one. We've still got 5 movies left on this list, which includes a handful of just stunning sci-fi movies and a movie that features easily one of Nicolas Cage's most underrated performances. But before that, I do want to speak directly to the dog owners listening, because today's sponsor, Sundays for Dogs, actually extended the life of our dog, Peanut. So somewhere around age 16 or 17, Peanut started just not digesting her food anymore, and she lost a lot of weight, and we thought her days were seriously numbered until I switched her to Sundays. And that's because Sundays is air-dried dog food that contains 90% meat, and it's human-grade meat, meaning meat safe for you and I to eat. The other 10% is vegetables with no synthetic ingredients. What's even better is because it's air-dried, it's shelf-stable, so there's no messy prep. It's not going to spoil in the fridge the way other fresh dog food brands can. And believe me, I know elderly dogs in particular can make a real mess with moist, fresh dog food. This stuff's easy. It's like kibble. You just pour it in the bowl and they scarf it down. And Sundays has more nutrition than the food you're likely just picking up at the store, but they can also save you money. Because it's air dried, they don't have to spend any money on refrigeration packs or getting it to you cool. They deliver it straight to your door, which means you don't have to go shopping, you're not overpaying for the ice packs, and you're giving your dog better nutrition than the grocery store food. Sundays can cost 40% less than other fresh dog food brands, but for a limited time, my viewers can save an additional 50% off their first order with Sundays when they go to my link in the description, or just type in sundaysfordogs.com/flick. That's 50% off an already great price. You know you're going to be giving your dog better nutrition that could help them live longer and at least live more comfortably, and it's not going to be this spoiled mess that you have with other fresh brands. So it's a fantastic deal, but speaking of fantastic stuff, let's talk about the top 5 movies on this list. Now, if this new shirt design was any indication, by the way, available at DarrenVanDam.com, they have a bunch of Alien movies included with Hulu, including the original Alien, a couple of Alien vs. Predator movies, Alien 3. They don't have Aliens, but for this particular list of visually stunning movies, I had to go with Prometheus. Now, I know people have problems with this movie, and I actually agree with a lot of them. It does have some major flaws that I think just hold it back from being a great movie. It's still pretty damn good though, and I appreciate a lot of the things that they were trying to do with this movie. In fact, there's a lot of great writing with this movie, and then they brought in Damon Lindelof, who kind of famously ruined the movie a little bit, but I still thoroughly enjoy it. I love a lot of the concepts and the ideas of the origins of these xenomorph aliens. And for a Ridley Scott sci-fi production, it is just top-notch. The sets, the setting, the costumes, and Michael Fassbender as the David android, I think is just incredible in this movie again. This movie falls a bit short of like true greatness, and I kind of hang all of that again on Damon Lindelof. But speaking of incredible performances, Nicolas Cage has quite a few in his filmography, but there's also a bunch of turds in the punch bowl, so it is hard to tell what Nicolas Cage movies are well worth watching, especially ones released today. But in my opinion, easily one of the best in the last 10 years is Pig. Now, the less you know about this movie, the better, but I can tell you it has like a career best performance from him. At least several moments are just absolutely dynamite. If you've ever thought Nicolas Cage is a terrible actor and you're open to having your mind changed, you need to see this movie. He actually plays a man who lives off the grid with a pet truffle pig who helps him collect truffles for fancy restaurants in the city. And again, this is the first few minutes of the movie. One day people break in, steal his pig, and he kind of goes on the warpath to get his pig back. So it's kind of a setup you've maybe heard before, sans the pig, but it does not go in any directions you're going to expect, and it has some amazing scenes of dialogue that are going to knock you off your feet. If you love great performances and really solid movies, definitely watch this one. Just do not expect this to be a Nicolas Cage action movie, because it's far from one. Real quick, if you like getting movie recommendations like this, consider clicking the subscribe button or the bell notification, the like, shares, comments, all of that stuff is a great way of letting the algorithm know you'd like to see more content like this again in the future. And then, even though I love my next pick as a movie, regardless of how it looks, because it's just that fantastic, it earned a spot on this list because it was revolutionary in the way it presented things visually, or at least Oh Brother, Where Art Thou was the first movie of its kind. Now, they did film this movie in the South, and as someone who has grown up here all my life, I can tell you, it's one of the greenest places in the world outside of the rainforest, or at least parts of it are. And that was the case when they filmed this movie as well, but the movie takes place during the Dust Bowl and the Great Depression. The lavish green setting actually didn't make a whole lot of sense for the time period. So even though they shot this movie on film, the entire thing was put through a process that color graded all of the trees and everything to have this golden color without tampering with the actors and stuff much. It uses computer technology, but then changes the actual film. They would do this again shortly after in The Aviator, and it has now become kind of a standard practice on a lot of movies, and it gives them this beautiful color palette and this cohesive style, and really raises their production value. And even though Oh Brother was one of the first to do it, it's still one of the most overt and obvious. Like, you can see it in every shot. I'm rambling, but this is also just a beautiful Coen Brothers movie. I mean, yes, it's funny all the way throughout, but there's so many sequences that just have this incredible pop to them. It's one of their best looking movies they've ever made, in my opinion. My next pick was also one of the first movies of its kind, the first to feature like a CGI character of sorts, but that's not why it made the list. It made the list because James Cameron just takes you to some amazing places in his movies, including the bottom of the ocean in The Abyss. Now, this is a movie I have loved for a long time, but actually, Avatar 2 got me back into this movie. The last sequence of Avatar 2 just reminded me so much of the chaos of The Abyss, and my goodness, for a movie from 1989, The Abyss looks incredible. It looks like it was filmed yesterday for about 90% of the movie. There's a handful of shots that look a little bit dated, meaning you can kind of spot some of the visual effects with your naked eye, but like a few of them out of the thousands that are in this movie. And that's because most of what you're seeing is real. They're on these huge sets with lots of real water, and it all looks insane. Not to mention it just being a top-notch story with a lot of drama and some incredible sequences that are just breathtaking. If it's been a while since you've seen this movie, I promise you, it's still to this day one of the best movies from 1989. And then what is going to top that? Dune is included on Hulu. Now, if that sounds like a cop-out to some of you because, you know, everybody has seen Dune, the reason I put it at my number one pick is because it's one of the only movies made recently that is still being made the way movies like The Abyss were made, with real sets, or at least big portions of sets. They're capturing a lot of stuff in camera, explosions in camera, and yes, a lot of CGI as well, but it's blended together in a way that I think most movies should be doing, or at least most movies that cost $200+ million should be doing them this way, and they're not. I mean, Disney has a monopoly on big budget movies right now, and they make all of them kind of the same way, and they have kind of a sense of sameness about them. The filmmaking in Dune just does an amazing job of taking all this stuff with practical effects and everything that decades of filmmakers have learned, and then it uses them with modern technology in this really seamless way. And again, there's not many of these big budget movies doing that today. They're half-assing it most of the time, and Dune is just kind of a shining example of how movies like that really should be produced and made. But that is the list. Do not forget to go check out the top pinned comment for the full list of titles, along with other streaming services currently hosting these movies across the globe. Also, don't forget to check out the Sundays link, especially if you've got a dog. It really is fantastic stuff. But I will keep making these videos as long as y'all keep watching them. Thanks for checking out this special Hulu episode, and you will see me on the next one.